So throughout our conversation, we talked a lot about the why. Why anti-racist education? Why the NCP? And so now we want to kind of get into like what that looks like in practice. Like how have our schools and our school leaders process the NCP, process our artwork, and what does that look like now on our campuses, and what strategies have people been implementing in order to make this live and be real for our students?
Yeah, no, so I'll preface this with saying, right, like we're in a place where we're still figuring lots of things out, right? Again, students just came back, we're in the context that we're in, so we're still kind of trudging away at what this looks like in implementation. Some of the strategies that has worked well, I think one is just in relationship building and building community with our scholars. So one of our campuses, of course, intentionally, before jumping into academic content, before kind of going back to business as usual, took a pause when our scholars came back and recognized that this actually isn't business as usual, right? This isn't kind of the traditional schooling that we have been accustomed to because of everything that's going on, and really did intentional things to build community and to get to know their students. And what that translated to for that particular campus is greater buy-in from scholars, right? Less behavioral issues, less redirection needed, because now, this scholar has a personal relationship with Miss Y. And so it's when Miss Y says, hey, let's reengage or track me, like they are able to kind of do that work, right? And so it really helped and worked to make sure that as a total and entire campus community, they were aligned. They understood what the expectations were. And that was from adults down to scholars, right? And so I think that was a brilliant strategy to make sure that they had the solid foundation to work on. So now that as things arise, which we know will happen, right? That's the nature of education and youth development. They are equipped to respond well, right? And they have a relationship with the student already and can be able to identify what supports that particular student needs without necessarily scrambling or figuring out how to kind of get that inner introduction to do some of those interventions. And so I think that was a great strategy. I think the other, it still comes down to relationship building too. We had a particular student who did bring marijuana to school, but before crossing that threshold, because they wanted, in their words, to have a better year and to start off on the right foot, was able to find that staff member that they had a relationship with, give them the marijuana before even starting school, and like name that, like, I forgot this here, but I really want to do well. And so I don't want to mess up right now, right? And that staff member able to still respond to the behavior, to still support them, but walk them through like, okay, well, let's talk about why you're choosing this substance, right? In the first place, but not making that scholar feel like, well, you're in trouble and this is what it's going to be. It was more so like, let me help you make better decisions and feel supported so that you can be successful and thrive. And let's also get to the root of why this, and what is it helping you with, and how can we figure out some other things that could help you cope or be supported in different kinds of ways, right? And so we have kind of examples like that, right? Relationship building is really core and key to what we see as restorative justice or restorative practices, right? That we're doing. I think the other kind of strategies and tactics is like alignment and messaging, right? Clear communication and expectations. For example, demerits were really kind of considered a warning at Noble. And so putting in a demerit allowed us to track behavior, but it was really kind of, this is the warning and this will accumulate to a detention and that will impact promotion and all of these other things. And so now the shift is like, we still need to track those behaviors, but that is not for necessarily this punitive consequence versus this is a piece of data, right? This is data for us to understand and acknowledge what support does this particular student need? How do we need to respond to this behavior? Who needs to be the person that responds to that behavior? And so even mindset shifts around like, what do we do with this data? What is this telling us or informing us about, and how do we use it moving forward? I think is really important. So clear communication, messaging, clearly tracking behavior, and easy systems to be able to kind of see what our data is telling us, to be able to see the trends across our campuses, as well as the network as an entirety, right? To help us assess, one, what the student experience is, what are our kind of gray areas that we need to maybe refine a little bit more, And then what supports do our campuses need to support their scholars as well?
Dr. J, thank you for joining us today on Changing the Course, Creating an Anti-Racist Education. Before we let you go, we need to have you have some last final words. So anything for our listeners before you go?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things that I will just note that has been the grounding of the work we've done specifically with the Noble Community Pact, and the work that really grounds me, right, and my team in terms of what we do is actually by Bettina Love. And it's one of my favorite quotes, and what we aspire to try to do here at Noble. And that is to love all children. We must struggle together to create the schools we are taught to believe are impossible. Schools built on justice, love, joy, and anti-racism. And so the work, when you see the Noble Community Pact, you are seeing us trying to operationalize just that. It is trying to operationalize joy. It is trying to operationalize love. It is trying to operationalize justice, and also trying to operationalize, most importantly, anti-racism.
Dr. J, thank you for joining us today on Changing the Course. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your expertise that you share with us today. And looking forward to sitting down with you again in the near future.
Awesome. Of course, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.